Hello, good afternoon, good morning, good evening, good welcome. That's a new phrase, good welcome. Hope you're all right. Very nice to see you again. It's Monday. It's This Week in WordPress. The show where every week we have two, usually three, panelists on talking about WordPress goodness. We've got a show for you today, largely dominated, I imagine, by two stories. Going to be a lot of WordPress 6.1, I think, and then there's this lovely CSS bit at the end, which might dominate. I don't know. We'll have to see. But I'm joined by three guests today. First up, returning, one of the co-hosts. Oh, he's just gone. No, he's back. Is Mark Westguard? How you doing, Mark?
Doing good. How you doing, Nathan?
Yeah, really good. Mark is the founder at WS Form, as you can see on his little moniker there. This is, of course, a WordPress form plugin that allows you to create complex forms in a no-code environment. You can check it out by going to wsform.com and you can learn more. It's a pretty decent plugin, I'd say, and you've got a deal coming up, which we'll talk about or at least see in a moment. But thank you for joining us. Mark's one of the co-hosts, so he's back very regularly, but we're joined by two other people who've not been on before. So, let's let's see how they do over the next 90 minutes or so. First of all, Jonathan. Now, Jonathan, it occurs to me that I'm not 100% going to get your surname right, but I'm going to give it a try because we didn't say it before the show. Is it Desrosiers?
Close. I say Desrosiers,
Okay.
but it's really French. So it's, if you want to be fancy, it's something like Desrosiers. But I don't force people to do that.
Jonathan Desrosiers. Yeah. Oh dear, I'm not going to do that again either. Jonathan is a full-time sponsored WordPress contributor over at Bluehost. He's a WordPress core committer, and like as if you could make it up, and considering everything that's been happening this week, he was the WordPress 6.1 release coordinator. So definitely a point person talking about all of the bits and pieces that have been going on today. Anyway, it's an absolute pleasure to have you here. Thanks for joining us. And finally,
Thanks for having me.
Yeah, thank you. And finally, we have a first timer as well, Steve Burge. I met Steve for the first time in WordCamp US not that long ago, and we got him on the show. Steve, how are you doing?
Not too bad. Not too bad.
Good. We're dominated. Look, it's like this is the first time it's been like 75% British. This is yeah. Although the Mark and Steve have both fled Britain, so I don't know if we can say that you're fully British anymore. But Steve is interested in writing and publishing. His team develops plugins for publishers, and although he hasn't written it in his biography, they produce the very cool Publish Press plugin. What's the URL for that, Steve? Is it just publishpress.com?
Yeah, it is.
Okay. Somebody says that the what are we seeing here? We've got a few bits and pieces saying that the comments are disabled on the live stream. Yeah, I'll fix that in just a moment. Sorry, that's my fault. There's a little bit of housekeeping that I have to do typically before a podcast episode starts. Mostly it's automatic and it sorts itself out, and it just occurred to me that I forgot to go and fix it. So in a moment when somebody else starts talking, I'll go and update it, and I'll get everybody to refresh the page, and you can just start watching the video again. So, yeah, that's my fault. Totally my fault, and I'm so sorry about that. Okay, firstly, if you are watching the show and you can't comment, then I've got another job for you instead, and that is to go and share it. Go and share it to wpbuilds.com/live. Let people know that you're coming. But also in the tweet, say, don't come for like 3 minutes, because it'll be at least that long before I manage to go and live fix the comments. Another way, though, if you are in the Facebook group that we've got, you can go and comment over there, and the chat should pick it up, whether you're on Facebook or YouTube comments. You do need to be a member of the group, and also if you're over there, Facebook don't give us your avatar or username unless you go through the little step of going to the top in the post and clicking on the link in there. It's chat.restream.io/FB, chat.restream.io/FB, and yeah. And then you should be able to get in. Let's see if anybody has got in. Yeah, some people have. Oh, yeah. So here's a way to get around that problem. If you're on wpbuilds.com/live, just click on the YouTube video and just go over to YouTube. Because all I do is I just basically embed the comments from YouTube. So just go over there. I'll still fix it anyway, but if you really do want to comment, that would be lovely. that'd be great. So let's see who we've got in the chat this morning. We've got Rob Cairns. Good morning, Rob, from Canada. Hello, Rob. Very nice to have you. And he's saying hello to all three of you guys as well. That's nice. We've also got Elliot Sowersby. How you doing, Elliot? Nice to have you. Good morning, says Peter Ingersoll from balmy Connecticut, US. I'm taking it's not that warm over there. Certainly isn't here at the moment. And we've got a Facebook user. So this is the problem that we face. I don't know who you are unless you go through the process of clicking on that link. And Trish Murphy, good morning from Kentucky. Yeah, nice. Okay, let's get stuck into the WordPressy bits and pieces, shall we? First off, a couple of bits of promotional stuff for me, if you don't mind. Here's our website, wpbuilds.com. If you fancy seeing what we're up to each and every week, we produce multiple bits of content. Just go and stick your email address in this form and we'll keep you updated. We've got a Black Friday deals page going on at the minute. And, oh, look at that, Mark. Look, there's a deal at the top there. Yeah, there's a little chat. And it's a searchable, filterable list. These spots at the top are sponsored. So first of all, big thank you to WS Forms, Stellar WP, Gravity Forms, and GoDaddy, who are the wider sponsor of the podcast as well. Thanks to them for sponsoring that page. But essentially, it's a searchable, filterable list of Black Friday deals. People are just sort of emailing them into me all the time. If you're a plugin developer and you want to add your deal, press this little button and fill out the form. We'll stick it on the page. We get quite a lot of visits there each and every year. Anyway, it's at wpbuilds.com/black. And also, trying to raise a bit of money for Big Orange Heart. We've got this awards page. It's at wpbuilds.com/awards. It's just a bit of fun, really. If you donate $20 or more to Big Orange Heart and then send me the link of your receipt or send me an image of your receipt, I will put you on the awards page and guarantee that you will win whatever category it is that you want to be in. So far, we've only got six people signed up, but the best podcaster who talks and owns a shed is Arthur Crap. Go and ask Bob Dunn about that. Best form plugin beginning with WS is, of course, WS Form. Best CRM named after Groundhog Day is Groundhog CRM. Best Nathan Wrigley impersonator was Michelle Frechette last week. That was funny. And the most influential WordPress podcast, of course, WP Watercooler. I do thank you guys. We've raised a few hunks there already for Big Orange Heart. So
a worthy cause.
A worthy cause indeed, yeah. Yes. Okay, let's get stuck into it. WordPress 6.1. What I would describe as a pretty gigantic release. A boatload of goodness in here. Do you know what, Jonathan? I could really rattle through this and spend 10 minutes of time just going through all the bits and pieces that I think are really good. But how about we just hand it over to you, considering that, you were very, very much involved in this. Do you want to just sort of run through the bits and pieces that you're pleased with or proud of or enjoy?
Unfortunately, I think we're in the same boat. We'll just end up taking up the whole time. But
that's fine. We're all good.
Yeah, this release was really great because we were able to bring... Sometimes the releases are really feature heavy. We're adding a lot of new stuff. And sometimes there's not a lot of new features that are ready or don't make the cut in time. And we spend a lot of time refining things and bug fixing and that type of stuff. But this one was really, I feel, struck a really great balance in the middle where, there's a lot of new features. There's a lot of bug fixes. We're hearing a lot of great things about the performance improvements that are in this release. At Bluehost, we're seeing that across the board. There's a big performance benefit from this release. And that's a major kudos to now there's a specific performance team. And they have been doing a lot of great job laying the groundwork for future things like better WebP support and core. But also they monitor week to week as changes are made in WordPress. They're doing constant testing and making sure there are no performance regressions, which I think that we flagged at least 4 or 5 really specific changes that introduce some regressions. And so they were able to step back and flag these things and then help the people that, authored these features or these changes and worked on them and work to find how to improve that a little bit and limit that impact that it had. So I think that's one thing I'm proud of in this release is the performance increase in making that a lot better. There's a ton going on, and sometimes it's just really hard to tune all those moving parts at once while continuing to add things. kind of looking at my list of things that I had flagged. One of my little favorite things in this release is you can more easily add the featured image as the image used in a cover block. And I think that little things like this that we add over time are going to really further enhance that full site editing experience, because that's such a common one where you have a big banner image at the top of your page. And it wasn't exactly easy to do that until now. And this is just a great way, like I said, to really hone in that editing experience. There's, as a developer, I always appreciate new filters and hooks that are added. There's a lot of filters added to the query loop block this release. So plugin developers, theme developers, they can have more control over what they're showing in these query loops that people add their blocks. And then another one that really enhances site editing, in my opinion, is the if you have a group block and you have nested blocks within that group, you can very easily lock all of those blocks within that group in one spot. And so if you're creating these layout templates and, you have, say, your magazine and you have a bunch of journalists go in and construct pages from templates, you can lock, say, the masthead, and maybe it's great example, the cover image is set to show the featured image, and you lock that, and the header, the title of that article, and the byline, and then they can't edit that. And so that way it's consistent across the board, and all they have to do is worry about writing their article and publishing their piece and getting it reviewed. So these are just a few things from that list. I'll let some other people chime in with what they really are excited about in this release, but just consistency and performance increases and a great balance across the board with features and fixes.
Well, Jonathan, can I ask? Oh, go ahead. Go for it, Steve. I was going to ask Jonathan a question. You seem to have an interesting position, being in Bluehost and on the WordPress team. Is there an advantage there in that you're able to quickly get massive amounts of testing feedback? If 6.1 rolls out, you immediately have millions of sites with your employer who is able to give you feedback on what's going wrong or where things may need to be tweaked.
Sure. Yeah. I mean, personally, that's one of my items in my checklist is, after a release goes out, you let 10, 12 hours go by with the auto updates to go out. And then as a normal checklist, the guide is to check the support forums, track, which is our ticket, our bug tracking software, GitHub, for the Gutenberg stuff, and see if there's anything that's, it doesn't seem right. Like, we're getting a lot of reports about this, we're getting a lot of reports about that. And, our support team internally at Bluehost is aware of the releases coming out. And if they do start to get us a volume of calls around specific topics that stand out above normal, we always get, the forums and support calls, you'll always get, hey, this theme doesn't work anymore when I update, or I'm having trouble updating my PHP version, whatever it may be. But there will be things from time to time that stand out, and then that will help us get feedback on what needs to go into the next release, 6.1.1, which we're planning on happening before Thanksgiving in the US. So there was a lot of little things that didn't quite make the cut in time, and we're hoping to get those in before the end of the year. And continuing the theme, several of them are going to be performance improvements. And just refining the features that were included in 6.1.
It was interesting you mentioning about things potentially not working out. For the first time, I think, ever, I got an email today from a theme developer saying that their theme is now in certain areas broken. I won't go into it. If you're receiving emails from that theme developer, you'll get that email, I'm sure, very soon. But that for them is a real moment in time, isn't it? And they've added a support request. It's on track now, and hopefully very soon something will get released, like you say, before Thanksgiving. But it was the first time I'd seen a developer kind of like, oh, I've really got to get out to my audience quickly and basically tell them to not update, because this is going to...
When you say first time, you mean in 6.1 specifically, or in
no,
general
it's the first
with major releases?
first time I've received an email from a theme developer direct into my inbox to say, actually, a core update has broken stuff for us. So, yeah, it was interesting.
Unfortunately, there were a couple.
Podcast,
sorry, say again.
Did they know you were having Jonathan on the podcast?
It would have been. No. It was a generic. It went out to. It was the standard sort of template to the list. It was whoa, hold on. If you've got my theme and you've got production ready sites, just hold off. It arrived about an hour and a half ago, so clearly a few days have gone by. But it's been.
Yeah, I always recommend. I'm aware of like 2 or 3 plugins that had to do kind of rapid releases. One was unrelated to 6.1, but it was just happened to coincide with that release time. But yeah, if you're a plugin or theme developer, I definitely recommend that you keep an eye on the Make WordPress blogs, because as we approach releases, especially when we get to the release candidate phase, there's a field guide that's published, and the field guide contains all of the developer notes that get published for that release. And these are all things that you need to be aware of, or things that are changing, new things that are added with detailed best practices to follow. And if you keep an eye on these, even if you check in every couple weeks, that will really help you avoid those instances where, hey, this is breaking and I need to update ahead of time so that when the update goes out, my customers don't have any issues. And there's always those edge cases, which at scale, you need that scale to kind of spot those issues. And people use, one of the downfalls of WordPress is that people use it in many different ways, even ways that they're not supposed to, or it's not intended to be used, right? But that's also the great part of WordPress. And so having that such a diverse user base and people using it in many different ways helps us find these really weird and intricate edge cases that we can fix and make it even more of a solid software for everybody.
Thank you for that. That was really, really interesting. I don't know if Mark wanted to get in there. It sounded like you did at some point. If you have any observations on 6.1.
Yeah, I was interested in the WP query caching, the database caching that they've introduced, which didn't get an awful lot of noise, but I thought it was quite a powerful addition to 6.1. And I just wondered, with yourself, Jonathan, coming from Bluehost, I know a lot of hosting companies have their own kind of caching mechanisms behind the scenes, which are often, other plugins rebranded or hidden away as an MU plugin. But is there anything you're aware of, if with 6.1 introduced in that, is there any kind of overlap with performance plugins that we need to be aware of that may cause issues, or are hosting providers disabling that caching in WordPress in favor of their own caching?
I think it's less. I don't think they would be disabling their specific type of caching. When we make these progressive improvements, we always try to do it in a backwards compatible way. And so whether that means taking advantage of a core API which in this case is the caching API, or some other mechanism that's in WordPress already at as much as we can. And so it should just seamlessly work. We did have one of the regressions we found in the testing was one of the changes related to caching changed the keys that were used. And so what that means is that all the caches related to that object type or that type of data is invalidated on update. And so you could have some cache stampeding and all that stuff. So it's better to make the keys continue to follow the same pattern, even if you change the underlying methodology of how that cache is determined or used. And that way you can avoid issues like that. So we ended up ripping that one out for the time being, just to be safe. But that's an example of that there. Most of the changes were in the cache API itself. So these were in the forms of functions that were doing their own thing to do something that's now possible elsewhere in core. Usually that means using WP query or something like that to get a list of certain type of pages. And so we really worked hard, and Johnny Harris did a lot of work on that. There were a bunch of people on the performance team that helped with that as well. And just really getting that the dry, do not repeat yourself aspects of things in there. There was just a lot of easy wins in that sense for this release.
Cool. Yeah, I think that's a great update.
The performance team really do seem to have made an incredible impact in, what is it, like 9 months or something, probably 12 months getting on for now. So kudos for all of the hard work.
Helps we have a bunch of Google friends that
that's right.
have long-time contributors to the project that are interested in that. So
indeed. Couple of questions around just specifically for Jonathan, because I've got really no insight into how all this works. So if you're the sort of release lead, if you like, how long ago did you need to commit to this? How long ago did you need to sort of go? I don't know what the relationship is at Bluehost, or whether they approached you and said, look, we would love for you to step forward and do this. You've obviously committed 100% of your time to the project anyway. But when do you have to commit? How much time do you have to commit? Does it take over absolutely everything that you do? In other words, for the last 4, 5, 3 months, whatever, is this 100% of your work schedule?
Yeah, so I'm never really told what to do to contribute by Bluehost. It's really great. I get a lot of autonomy, and it's just really me and my other team members that are contributors. We're just trusted to go out and do have a positive impact out in the community, and that could be, I don't know, maybe one day I go take photos and submit it to the photo directory, or whatever it is to help the community and help WordPress. We're kind of trusted to do that. The day-to-day core stuff, that's kind of something that I'm into. So I usually gravitate towards, ticketing, triage ticketing. And I've been a part of a few WordPress releases in the past as well. But typically what happens is after a release goes out, there'll be a call for volunteers. And really anybody can be on a release squad. It does take a good amount of time. For example, it depends on your role. Maybe you're a triage lead, which basically means you're going to go through all the tickets and help make sure they move forward towards resolutions, or they get kicked out of the release if they're not going to be ready. Maybe you spend 2 hours a day doing that. And so some of those roles you might be able to do with less time. But the release coordinator role, I would say probably about 80% of my week was helping to make sure things were not blocked, make sure we were consistently communicating things that were going on as the release progressed, making sure we were going to meet our goals of what we wanted to include and what was not going to be included. We were clear why and how to move that forward for the next release. And then at the end, it obviously jacks up to about 100% of my time, 120% depending.
Sure,
yeah, there's always a crunch time rush, especially before beta and release candidate. But it's basically you can throw your name in the hat, your hat in the ring, and based on qualifications and what you like to do, the project leadership will just kind of round everybody up. Say, hey, would you like to do this? Would you like to do that? This is what we have a spot for. Or how about you shadow this release? We have a lot of people this release, and the next release you can do something of this nature. So yeah, if you're interested in that, I definitely recommend it. Even if you want to follow along or you want to shadow someone, take an eye out. The Make Core blog, that's a great place to follow, and that will be going up there, and you can throw your hat in the ring and try to become a part of the release team.
Nice.
So, Jonathan, this is the first time we've talked. What, if you don't mind me asking, what skill set are you bringing to your role? Are you primarily a developer, a project manager, both of those? What's your background?
Yeah, so I'm a developer. I learned development in college and stuff, and I kind of gravitated towards the PHP, WordPress community, and kind of stuck my teeth in there. So I've been working with WordPress since about 2007. And I've worked at agencies, I've worked at large universities, and all just like building WordPress plugins and products and infrastructure around that. And I got started contributing at around 2012, and I just kind of really like the idea of making the software better for whoever might stumble across it and want to use it for whatever their needs are. Whether it's go ahead.
So you knew exactly what you were getting into. You've been doing this for 10 years. You had a very clear idea of exactly what taking this role would involve.
Yeah, I heavily contributed. Probably starting 2017, I would help run developer chats. I would help, contribute to tickets very regularly. When I was at Boston University, I would work with tickets we would discover, issues we would discover in our day-to-day. I would work to fix them in core itself. And so I was very familiar with the day-to-day and the, how the community worked, how the community functions, how things got done. And I specifically signed up for this job as a full-time contributor job, and I was fortunate enough to get that opportunity.
That's so.
Would you do it again?
Yes, I would. You probably think I'm crazy, some people, but
yeah, I imagine certainly over the last few weeks, particularly leading up to the deadline, I imagine that there is a certain level of stress that's involved, and staying up and burning the candle at both ends a little bit. But
I'd love to call out something that Michelle just said, is that you don't have to be a developer. I'm speaking specifically from my background as a developer. I have a developed background, but as a release coordinator, I'm serving more as a almost like a project manager, more like a community manager. I'm kind of managing this group of people that are trying to work towards a common goal. But even if you're a designer, you could help design a default theme. You can documentation. If you enjoy technical writing, you can help with the documentation for the release. There's so many ways that you can get involved. So if you're not a developer, I mean, I'm speaking from that background, but that's not a specific background you have to be able to get involved with WordPress or the release squad.
Yeah, thank you. And a good point, Michelle. I think there's loads of different things that you can do to push the project forward. Just so that you know, if you are at wpbuilds.com/live and you refresh the page, the comments should now be active, so that's helpful. But okay, so a couple of things on that release. I think it might be good to just go through a few high-level items. I probably looked at about 6 or 7 articles about WordPress 6.1, and what was curious is that every single one of them had a different selection of best bits. So I just picked 2, and I'll go through some of the bits that these particular authors have highlighted as being really great. So we're over at WP Tavern. Of course, that means Sarah Gooding at the moment. She emphasizes, you can see with the pictures, the new arrangements for things, well, the new UI, if you like, for doing things like borders and border radius and margin and padding and so on. Jonathan, I think, mentioned earlier about the ability to have the inner block locking, so you can kind of click a box, check a check mark, if you like, and lock everything parent right through to children. So that's a really nice addition as well. There's a whole kind of like different arrangement of doing the menus, but there's no images there. But this is probably the thing which has got me most interested in this release, and this is just this really unusual default theme that we've now got. Unusual in the sense that it's essentially the old theme that we had 2022, but with full site editing, it's now been, how to describe it? I'm going to use the word skinned. Let's go for skinned. If you install WordPress 6.1, you'll get the 2023 theme, and along for the ride come 10 different style variations. There we go. And so they're using exactly the same content, but you can go through all 10 of them. And whilst they broadly look the same, there's real large difference in the way that they present. So, they might have different fonts or different font sizes or different margins and padding and spacing. And so it's really nice just to flick through and see how the content can be done differently. There was a website, I can't remember what it was called, and you could, this is going back like 15 years. You could go, it was something like CSS Zen Garden or something. Do you remember that? Does that ring any bells? And you could go there and you could flick through, you could click buttons, and essentially it would show you how the website would be modified by just altering the CSS. And it kind of has that sort of feel to it. You can really modify things just by clicking buttons. So that's really nice. There is an awful lot about this fluid typography, which is to like as well. This is the idea that rather than just kind of assign certain breakpoints and then the font size changes, there's a little video here, which I may as well play it actually, because it really does show it beautifully. You can see right there as the video starts, when it's collapsed, heading towards a kind of like tablet ratio, then the typography just reduces fluidly. It doesn't suddenly break at different points. It gets bigger and bigger and bigger, pixel by pixel, if you like, until it hits a certain point. Then it goes no further on mobile. So that's all been added in. There's the ability now to, and I will make use of this every single week, multiple times. So nested items in things like list and quote blocks are now individual kind of like first relations now. So rather than having a list item that you can't move up and down like you can a paragraph, you can now move those items around and you can style them differently and so on and so forth. So that was Sarah Gooding's take on it. And then just very quickly, we had the Yoast take on it as well. They talk about global styling being an important thing. I think everybody probably understands who's watching this show what that means, but it's the ability to basically set things in one place and forget about them. And if you need to tweak something, you can just go to this one source of authority and change them there. They talk about this 2023 theme as well, and the margins and the padding and the spacing. They also talked about, as Jonathan said, the ability now with just a click of a button, if you've got a cover block, you can use the featured image as the background for the cover block, which is really helpful. Fluid typography comes in as well. Oh, and a whole bunch of new options with templates. So you can now set templates for posts, post types and individual post pages, individual pages, as well as a whole load of archives, things like categories. You can do a single category or the whole, all categories and so on and so forth. And then that's what I was mentioning. So yeah, that I think is the stuff that I would take away from there. Basically, in other words, it's a giant release. And Jonathan, bravo for getting it through.
I only deserve a small portion of the credit there.
Yeah.
There were like a few other small things that I thought of while you went through there. Is one of the great things about this release was that 2023 is marked accessibility ready, which means it meets the accessibility requirements of the theme directory. So that's great, obviously, for anybody that may have some type of disability that needs to get started with the site. The default theme that comes with WordPress, they could actually get started with. And the great part about that is 2023 is a pared down version of 2022, I believe.
Yeah.
And so 2022 also has it. And then we've also been able to add it to 2021. So this is a great example of my next point, where we're building. We've kind of had these 100, 200 separate things that have been getting worked on that all work together, but now we're standardizing all of this. And so these themes are taking advantage of that foundation in the block editor, and we're able to build off of that and bring more consistency with the padding and the margin to all those small parts, as well as the accessibility aspects and all these great features and improvements that everybody's been working on. We can now more easily bring it everywhere in the theme and on the site through these changes.
Yeah, it does feel like a release where loads and loads and loads of little changes. We literally could have done an hour and a half going through just all of the bits and pieces, but there was some of the high level items. So it's massive, it's really big, and feels to me as if, I don't mean this to come out the way it might come out, so forgive me if this comes out in a negative way, because that's not my intention. It feels as if we are now approaching a point where really non-technical people can begin to customize things effectively and not really have to go through boatloads of documentation and end up in support forums for how do I do this. I think a lot of it from here on in is available to basically anybody who's got a mouse and the ability to sort of sit there and try things out. So great.
I think that's a great thing. I don't think that's negative at all, because I mean, as technical people and building products, I mean, that's really our goal, right? Is to make our product easy enough that anybody can use. And so while it might put certain parts of our jobs out of use or out of need, there's new areas that come up that we can focus on and get our products to places to spend our time. There's new places to spend our time for things that we might have found boring or not really that exciting. I think back to like making lots of custom meta boxes and to control how things look, right? And now we can just have a style.json file and we can focus on other things and bringing more to our customers or whatever our backgrounds might be, whatever we work on.
Yeah, thank you. Quick comment from Peter. Thanks, Peter. He says it's important to remind folks that many of the design improvements are theme dependent. Yeah, good point. Especially if you're not using a block theme, which I think it's probably fair to say is 99% of the people at the moment. This includes the margin, padding, etc. So yes, that is a really good point. You to make the best use of this, you would need to be using a block-based theme. So obviously 2023 is one of them.
Block templates. Oh, sorry. I told you I could go on forever.
Yeah.
But there are some block templates now that can be used in classic themes, classic style themes as well.
Yes.
So we've been able to bring blocks to these classic themes through the editor, but more and more we're kind of finding these one-off things that we're able to bring to classic theme users so that they can ease that transition almost to a block-based theme in the future.
How does that look in the UI then? So if you've got a classic theme, do you have a new menu item or something?
I think it's because the classic themes will still use the block editor, so I think it's the same interface. That's honestly one of one of the features I didn't get a lot of time to play around with, so I don't want to speak for sure.
I just
but
wondered
I think
where
that
you'd
it's just
find
the
them in
same.
the UI, because now it's just sort of all hijacked, isn't it? The whole site editor is the menu item, and obviously that's not there if you've got a classic theme. So anyway, maybe Peter, if you've played with that, you can let us
look
know.
for that.
Yeah, thank you. All right, let's move on a little bit. Let's talk about some other bits and pieces. So I did a podcast episode this week with Matt Cromwell, who is he is one of the founders. I'm going to say one of the co-founders, because I think it was with Devin Walker as well. I'm not 100% on that, but I think that's true. Of Give WP, did a podcast episode with him all about the fact that several weeks ago there were some statistics removed from the WordPress repo in terms of the statistics about whether your plugin had gone up or down in install numbers. That was all removed. I still quite haven't in my own mind got to the bottom of why all that was removed. First of all, it sounded like security, and then it sounded like they just weren't fit for purpose, or they were, I don't know, maybe the API endpoints were getting plundered. I'm not entirely sure. But they've gone. And so that led Alex Denning to write a blog post basically saying, look, can we just all say now that the WordPress repository for an upsell plugin, if you've got a paid for plugin, his contention is don't bother using the repo, just put all of your efforts into the commercial plugin, have it wherever you have it, and the time and effort that you would spend on .org supporting it and all of that kind of stuff, put it into the paid for version and do it that way. Matt Cromwell, within a day or so, had written his own blog post kind of countering all of that and saying, look, it really works for us over at Give. We convert a lot of free users over to the paid tier. And whilst there are bits of it that are not so great, and like the removal of the statistics and so on and so forth, it's still a great channel for us. We like having a free version. That's a lovely thing to be able to offer. It might not be the full Monty, but it's still entirely usable. And also they were saying that their conversion rates are pretty good. They convert into well into double digits, or like more into the 20 and 25% kind of area. So it's a really good marketing channel for them. And so because I know that we've got two plugin developers on the show today, I thought this would be an interesting piece to talk about. Both of you, I think I'm right in saying, have got a free version on the repo. And so, yeah, let's just have that conversation. What's your thoughts on this? Mark, WS Form, Steve has got Publish Press. Do you see this as like, do you wake up every morning and sort of think, is it a bit of a grind, the WordPress repo? Is it a good channel? What do you think?
Sometimes, sometimes it can be a bit of a grind. It's as a recent WordPress plugin. I mean, we've been in the repo probably 3-4 years now. It is a challenge to get any kind of exposure there initially, because you're naturally going to be at the bottom of the list because you've got no reviews, you've got very few installs, etc. I actually had a call last week with Matt Mullenweg and Josefa from WordPress and discussed it briefly. And Matt made a good point that it's not necessarily total installs that can get you a good ranking. There's a lot more in the algorithm that goes into the ranking there. And that's evident with us. We've managed to bring our ranking up, and we have people below us that maybe have 100,000, 200,000 installs, but we're still above them because we've got some great reviews. We keep on top of the support requests and everything else. That being said, it is a struggle, and it's basically for us. It's we're the new kids on the block. And one of the things that I said to Matt was, he asked me, he said, what can I do for you? And I said, one of the things I would love to see in the repo is, or on WordPress.org, is giving these smaller plugins, these newer plugins, a voice. We tend to hear about all the big boys all the time, understandably, but there are some fantastic other plugins out there that do some really, really great things, and also do things in new and innovative ways. And I'd love to see a bit more, ability for those people to be heard. Maybe through the WordPress.org and .com blogs, perhaps. Yeah, I mean, the active installs thing, going back to that point, that was for us was a little bit difficult because now we obviously, when we push a release, we can't see increases or decreases. Although I'm told that there are going to be, they are working on some new metrics for that, which I think will be fantastic. I used to love sites like Active Installs that would, show me that I'm going in the right direction. I'm not going south, which is good. So those sites are effectively not working right now because of that, but hopefully they'll come back online when those new metrics are available. And I'm excited to see what they're going to do with that. And I believe there was a down on your list.
Yeah, we can just push into that. Yeah, we'll push into that one very quickly before we go to what Steve thinks. This is a new site, a new place that you can visit, which is hoping to bridge the gap. I don't know if this project's going to be attempting to stay around for forever, but again, it's in the Tavern. It's Sarah Gooding. There's a new service that you can go and look at. It's called WP Rankings, and it was put together because of this removal of these statistics. They built this tool, and I'm not entirely sure where it's gathering the data from. I read this piece very, very briefly just because I knew that it would kind of fit in with what we were talking about. But you can see it does show certain types of data. It shows things moving up, things going down. You can categorize and you can search and filter and so on and so forth. So I don't know if this is a destination for the likes of you, Mark, and you, Steve, in the future, but it's called WP Rankings, and you can find the article in the Tavern on that website. So maybe there's an alternative place to go, but I guess the issue may be it's yet another place to go, and it would be nice to, I guess, have these updated statistics all in the one place.
Yeah, and one thing we've mentioned in the past is maybe if I don't know, if one of the concerns was that the data was public, even just as a contributor to one of those repos, to be able to see those stats would be awesome. I'm not quite sure how WP rankings work. I had a quick look at it. It seems to rank them by maybe total installs or something. It's obviously mining data that it can mine right now and then keeping that data historical, but it's quite cool. It's nice to be able to see. I think it gives you a ranking of overall across the tens of thousands of plugins that are there, where you're currently ranked, and it will give you a graph showing if you're growing or declining. So it gives you another kind of indicator in terms of what your active install count is.
One of the things that Matt mentioned, that is to say Matt Cromwell on the podcast, not Matt Mullenweg that you obviously had a chat with, is he said that exactly like you, that depending on how, there's a whole bunch of metrics, and obviously your historical install count is one of the metrics, and it likely is quite a big one. So companies like Yoast, who have got 5 million plus, they're gonna do well on the search for SEO because they're Yoast and they've got 5 million installs. But it was exactly like you said, the metrics you can, and Matt said he'd actually looked at the algorithm which makes up that search in WordPress.org's repository, and it's a blunt instrument. It's not Google. It's not kind of looking for synonyms and things like that and trying to work out what were you really trying to look for there. No, it's just whatever you look for it's going to give you that information back. But things like the speed at which you get through your support tickets is one of the metrics. Your meta descriptions is one of the metrics. So, if you are a good custodian of your plugin and you do update the support tickets, that is a metric which is firing in. The other point that he made was that it's just a jolly good place to actually get Google rankings, because if you've got a fresh new plugin, the WordPress.org repo page is very likely to get picked up with Google and send Google-based traffic to your plugin, probably before the repo starts to do its work. But again, Matt made the point that you made, Mark, which was it would be nice to have like a rising stars thing, a bit of the UI somewhere in the plugin repository where things which had got talked about, I don't even know what that means, but something which had last week it was on 3 installs, this week it's on 30. Well, that's like 1,000% growth or something. It's just that's good for them.
Getting some traction.
Let's make that obvious and those kind of things. So it might be rising stars, it might be stuff that's been featured in the news. I don't know.
Yeah, and that was one of the things I mentioned was who do they pick? Who would they call out? So maybe plugins that are starting to get some traction somewhere, either in the WordPress media or through install counts that are jumping through the roof or something like that. But yeah, it was interesting. I was also looking at Matt's, like GlamMat plugin that he does. And he gives some really good advice on that about how to improve your plugin and improve your ranking. There are things that you can do over and above getting those installs to get yourself a little bit more exposure. Things like, just what tags you're choosing,
right?
And things like that. So I going back to the very original question about is it worthwhile being in the plugin directory?
That was my next question. Yeah, what do you reckon?
I absolutely think it is.
Okay.
I think I think it also depends on the model that you've got. So some of these plugins, you will install the free plugin and buy premium things around that.
Right.
In which case your free install count is going to just naturally grow. Ours, for example, we have a completely separate pro plugin, and you uninstall the free.
You uninstall, right? That's different. Yeah.
Yeah. So I lose a free install every time somebody purchases our product, effectively. But the reason we do that is that we didn't really want to have two plugins necessarily need to be installed because there's a lot of overlap there. So yeah, I just it depends on what your model is, but we for sure get conversions through the free directory, and it's something that we'll continue to do. And I like having a light version available for people in the community that just need a basic contact us form. In our case.
Yeah.
So it's a nice way to give back to the community.
Yeah, that's nice. And I know that Steve does things for free because I use one of them. I forget, Steve, what it's called. The unpublish plugin that you create, which takes a publish prop plugin and then you feed a date into it, and then at that particular point it returns it to being a draft or what have you. I make use of that pretty much all the time. And so anyway, the wider point about the repository, what's your thoughts?
It's absolutely valuable to be on there. I guess everyone who's involved in one of these directory businesses probably has a love-hate relationship with the one they're on. If you're an Amazon seller, you have a love-hate relationship with the Amazon rankings. Shopify, WordPress, you both love and hate it at the same time. The original question was debating between Matt and Alex, and they're both right, of course. That the best strategy is to have a good content strategy plus a good repo strategy. We write a lot of content. We work really hard on our repo rankings, and the two actually link together because a lot of the best tutorials and documentation improvements we write come from the people who stumble across the plugin on the repo, run into a problem, find a bug, have a question. And our entire content strategy is basically built around people's questions. We're not banging out articles, the top 10 forms plugins that start with WS, or the top.
Why not? Why not?
What's the matter with you? That's the perfect article.
And we're not doing like the top 10 Bluehost contributors to WordPress or anything. None of that kind of blog spam. The top 10 WordPress podcasts. There's a lot of people that have that content strategy, right? Our content strategy is very focused on people's questions and the best source of new questions, of new feature ideas, just people who have things you hadn't thought about before. Those people are often coming from the repo. But yeah, Alex is right and Matt is right. I think they're both, and they both know it too. I think they're both trying to get a little attention for their own services.
Certainly worked.
Yeah. When it comes to the advanced installs, when it comes to the data that was removed, I always found it useful because every time we screwed up somehow, it would appear on those rankings. That I would look at one of our plugins, and we've got probably about 15 on the repo now. Anytime I would look at the weekly increases for one of our plugins, and it had suddenly turned negative, I could guarantee 100% that I'd messed something up. that we'd added a bug in a new release, and I would spend the next 2-3 hours trying to figure out what it was, because every time that active install chart went south, we'd messed up.
That's fascinating. It's
yeah,
like
so I miss it for that reason.
It's like a support request, but with nobody at the other end actually telling you, just like click on install.
Yes,
you're incredibly thankful when somebody actually sends you a support ticket and says this is not working, because that's worth its weight in gold. Because there's a lot of people that will just go deactivate,
get rid.
So it's great to get that feedback from people.
There's also a lot of people that will just go right to Twitter and be like, "Oh, this piece of crap doesn't work,"
That's right.
And so to have those people with that mindset of, "Hey, let me help them fix this," is a really great thing to have.
Yeah.
Even the angry people on Twitter are useful.
Yes, not as productive sometimes, but useful.
It's a bit of a time suck, but.
Some of the angriest people we've ever come across in support have also been some of the most useful.
Interesting.
That's not to say this is not a green light to get angry with us, but
you're not encouraging that. So I think the verdict, certainly from the two panelists here who've got the plugins in the repo, is that it's a very valuable strategy, and they're going to continue using it. So anyway, go and check that podcast out. It was on WP Tavern. It was episode number 49 of the Jukebox podcast, so you can check that out.
One thing I'll say that you said that Matt was converting from GiveWP at like 25%.
I can't remember the exact number, but I'm pretty sure it was 27.
If I was converting at 27%, I would not be on this podcast. I would be on the beach.
Yeah,
with my feet up.
What are you doing? That's right. And also, he
he's getting something
I'm
right.
pretty sure that's the number. So if anybody is actually listening to this and has heard the podcast and can remember the number, I'm pretty sure that's what he was saying. But also, he's I think their install base is 100,000 plus. So it's a big footprint that they've created. He would be in the category of elite plugin, I suppose, if there was such a thing. But anyway,
that may well be down to their model as well. You can still give WP, and then if you want to do certain types of payments and stuff like that, then you'll buy a small add-on for it. So they've done it the right way for sure.
Yeah, I think they did quite a lot of due diligence to make that work. And of course, whoever this Facebook user is has remained anonymous. Ew, look, Mark Westguard hanging out with Matt.
It was a quick call.
Just drop that little bomb in and just kind of all casual, like, I was having a chat with Matt and Giuseppe. Yeah, well, how nice that they want to bend your ear about that kind of stuff. Or maybe it was the other way around. You want to bend their ear. Let's move on. So a couple of things that I wanted to mention on behalf of other people. This first one, I'm afraid to say you can't actually see this unless you already own the plugin. But I do just want to give Ovidiu, who is the developer of WP Codebox. Have any of you ever come across WP Codebox? It's a cracking plugin that he's made, and it essentially allows you to, let's say, take PHP snippets or CSS snippets, and you kind of put them in with conditional logic into various different parts of your website. So it's just a really nice UI inside of WordPress to do all that kind of stuff. So he's been helping people to create snippets rather than install a plugin. If you just want to do a simple little thing and there's a snippet out there somewhere, why not deploy the snippet? And the intention is that people will become more reliant on snippets and less reliant on plugins. I was talking to him the other day, and he said to me, I'm kind of doing the whole thing in reverse. I've decided to... I don't even know how to describe this. I've decided that I'm going to create an AI which will make snippets by typing in sentences. And I thought, blooming heck, all right, let's see if you can do it. And here's an example of it. So the intention here is, first of all, you have to have a WP Codebox account to make this work. But the only reason for that is because it's in like super alpha stage. So he doesn't want to get people out there creating all these snippets, putting them into their websites, and then obviously discovering the AI broke, and now my website is just a white screen of death. But check it out. You go to create a code snippet. Come on, somebody give me something reasonable that we could ask this AI to generate. Something within the bounds of like normal that might be possible, and we'll see if it pushes anything out in our direction. Mark, Steve.
How about someone in a subscriber role who joined in the last week?
So show subscribers from the last week. Is that what you're saying?
Sure, let's go with that.
Let's see if it can do that. I don't know. I have absolutely no way if this is going to work or not. So there we are. It's created a bit of code. You guys are going to be far more able to tell me whether or not this is legit or not. So it says subscribers array, subscribers start, end date, obviously -1 week. Is that what we said? Did we say in the last week?
It gets negative points for using gravity forms there instead of WS form.
It's
Okay, I suppose that's fine. Yeah, the little filter there. But it's had. I guess it had to jump one way or the other, maybe in the future. But look what it did. You just had to write in English.
The example you did earlier, Nathan, was really impressive.
Let me go for that one then. Let me just refresh that again.
That one seems to have pulled a wrong piece of code, but the one
I think
earlier...
So let's be very, very clear. He's just wanting people to sort of check this out at the minute. So I said, show posts, and I just made it up, didn't I? What did I say? Show posts from the category.
Could it be using the GitHub Copilot?
Oh, let's do the category. Oh, I don't know. Westguard, because obviously all websites have a category Westguard. From the category Westguard.
You said skip first or something.
Yeah, I'll put skip the first, and I'm going to use 1st first post. Let's see what that does. We're hoping that this is going to work because something similar worked a little while ago. So it's trying to generate something. It's having a bit of a think. Oh, there it is. Right, let's go back. So what's it showing? Show the post.
So there you go.
Rename Westguard. The offset is -1. Sorry, is 1. Post per page, okay, and then it's done the query, the post, the title. So it's showing, a limited range of different things. But what?
That's essentially correct.
The robot doesn't scale, though.
It's
going to break eventually.
But my point is, if you want to learn this kind of stuff, that is a really, really nice little tool to do this. And he is very, very clear. This is the first run at it. So he's trying to build out the AI in the background. Now, where this is really impressive, I think, as well, is if you have a piece of code, and I haven't got anything to hand, so I won't bother. But the idea is that it does it in reverse as well. You paste in a bit of code that you're confused by, and the intention is that it would show you in plain English text what the code is trying to do. And he did actually send me a screenshot of something, and it was, there was quite a dozen lines of code, and then it just explained it in English sentences, complete with punctuation and full stops and commas, and I just thought, how amazing is this? So this is called WP Codey. WPCODEY.com. My understanding is that you can't log in unless you've got a WP Codebox account. So if you have one of those, go and play and give our video some necessary feedback, which would be amazing. Somebody says create a pop-up. No, I refuse to create a pop-up. I'm not doing it. But just go and check it out. I just think it's pretty remarkable. You can see some other things here. Modify WordPress code snippet. And explain an error in a code snippet as well.
That'll be quite useful, yeah.
Yeah, that's a really
I think this needs to be taken with a pinch of salt, like any other AI system.
Yeah.
It's like the people that produce Bertha.ai, they always say to use it as a tool to accompany what you're doing. Don't use it to literally spit stuff out.
What their product is trying to do is they're trying to make it so that you've got like a cloud of all your snippets. So you install his plugin, and then you take that plugin to the different websites that you're using, and you then just suck the snippets out of the cloud and put them where you want them with whatever logic you want to apply there. And his intention is to get a list of bona fide working snippets into not just your own individual cloud, but his cloud, his plugins cloud. The idea being that you could say, I don't know, I have a need for a particular kind of snippet. Is it in that repository there? Yeah, I'll download it, have a look at it, check if it's suitable. And then this would bolt alongside of that if this does put out some decent stuff. But brilliant.
One thing that'd be really cool is this, but for creating style JSON files. So you could say a theme that's like red based with green highlights, and it would maybe use some design trends, analyze design trends or something, and spit out a style.json file that has your theme.
Yes,
It'd be kind of cool to experiment with.
Yeah,
he's definitely, I think, somebody to watch, because I think his approach to all of this is very cool. So interesting.
very
stuff.
clever.
Yeah, very clever. And obviously he's building out the AI. He knows it's imperfect. He just wanted people to just have a little go and see if it threw up any errors. And I just thought it was well worth looking at. Okay. Right. I couldn't be... Sorry, somebody was about to say.
I stumbled across the guy's Facebook group a while ago, and I thought it was just a regular plugin. I think maybe someone said there was a Publish Press question in there, and they said, "Hey, Steve, join this Facebook group." And I joined and answered. And I've been a member since then. And it's amazing how busy and interactive it is just for a plugin with some little code snippets. It essentially is how I saw it. The guy has really built an interactive sharing community around his plugin, which I think was a free version until very recently.
Yeah.
I agree.
Yeah, it was on a really, I think it was a lifetime pricing, and it was a very small amount of money. I forget, but maybe you guys don't see this because you're developers and you're full time on all of that. I kind of see this little undercurrent of community members who really want to get into this whole snippet thing. They want to dabble in the code, but they don't want to make it their full-time thing. They're designers by definition. They enjoy using, I don't know, their page builder to speed up that process and so on. Maybe they're going to start getting into things like full-site editing. But they do realize that it's probably a bit heavyweight to install, I don't know, great big plugin to do one tiny little thing. You check one box and you've got 12 things which are unchecked. Why not just sort of find something that scratches that itch and go and figure out how WordPress does things? And by looking at the query that it generates or the little function that it's added in, you start to get an idea. Oh, okay, that's called that, and that's how that works. Okay, then I just think there's this little tinkerer community which he seems to be fostering really well, which is really nice.
You kind of gave me another interesting idea. Is there's a site called the Developer Hub on WordPress, if you're not familiar with it. And every time there's a release, there's a documentation parser that's run, and every function, every action hook, all the inline documentation associated with that code is displayed on that website. And at the bottom, there are comment forms where you could add call outs to specific ways that works, or add specific examples. And so I wonder if using that software to generate examples, contextual examples based on the documentation, the inline documentation, and then someone maybe like approves or disapproves them, and it refines itself, and using that to add examples for people to learn when they look up certain functions or certain action hooks.
Yeah, because I'm imagining for his own product, at least anyway, he is going to want some kind of moderation, which presumably will feed into the AI. This worked, tick. Okay, that's helpful. This didn't. Okay, crossed. That wasn't something, that was a blind alley or what have you. Yeah, it's really interesting. It's just like a little subset of WordPress users, which is just fascinating. Anyway, let's push on. That's WP Cody. This is totally changing the subject, and in a really interesting way, I think, actually. This is an article which is written on WordPress.org. It's Hanopcan. This is Hannah. I've met Hannah at, I think it was WordPress London I met her. No, it was WordPress Manchester as well. I think I met her. She's started up a thread here, which came out on the 1st of November, and it's called "Now We Have a Sustainability Channel in Making WordPress Slack. What should we do?" And this may have crossed your path, or it may not have done. In the WordPress Making Slack, there is now this sustainability channel. It seems to have got 100 people in it, which I think is a pretty cracking start. So we all know kind of what sustainability means, I guess, to some extent. But I think Hannah's really just asking the question, well, what does that mean in terms of WordPress? How do we as WordPress users, customers, developers, and what have you, how do we make WordPress a more sustainable thing? And then she drew my attention to a particular comment. Now, I hope I can find it. Yeah, here we go. She says, "I'm going to post a comment I've seen from somebody else called Maratore in a Slack post. She's talking about the idea of listing sustainable WordPress themes and indicating it might be something she might be interested to contribute in." So we were talking a minute ago about raising the profile of plugins, based upon certain new criteria that haven't been imagined yet. What if we did the same for themes? If in the theme repository we were able to say, this comes in at only a certain amount of, let's say kilobytes. That might be a useful metric. I don't really know. But obviously, with WordPress powering a gigantic proportion of the web, WordPress, silly thing to say, but WordPress is responsible for quite a lot of pollutants, I would have thought, going into the environment. Fossil fuels are being burned to power the machines, which are powering the servers, powering the computer that I'm using each and every day, and so on and so forth. And if people are browsing your websites and it's got less impact, then that could only be a good thing. So really, I'm just sort of opening a discussion amongst the four of us. Have you got any thoughts on this? Does this even matter to you? Does this concern you in the slightest? It obviously does Hannah, and I think she's making a strong point.
We did a whole series of podcasts last year with Hannah and others about environmental issues in WordPress. And I gave up in the end because it was really, really hard to find anyone that cared, or at least openly cared about it. And I'm glad that Hannah has finally found a place to connect those people together. Because when we started getting interested in talking with people about environmental issues, I found Hannah and interviewed her, and then is there anyone else who has any interest in this? And she's like, well, I think there's a guy, Danny, who does the MailChimp for WordPress plugin. And there's actually some information about Danny's plugin in the comments thread that you shared there, Nathan. And she said, well, there's Danny, but I think he's on vacation for like 3 months. And then it was really hard to find anyone that was interested in this topic. So I'm glad it's finally bubbling up. I think we ended up doing 6 or 7 podcasts, and the 2 actionable items that came up time and time again were plugin developers or core developers trying to make their code as lightweight as possible, and also hosting companies trying to move to green hosting.
Yeah.
One of the videos we have is with a Automatic employee who had
Was it Jack Lennox by any chance?
No, it was Yanir, an Israeli guy working for Automatic, and he was helping Automatic move entirely towards hosting powered by green energy. So that was really the key takeaway. Was if you're on the hosting side, you can really make an impact. And if you're a developer or a plugin or theme developer, you can make an impact by making your code as lightweight as possible.
Here's my thought on your initial comment, Steve, and it's this, right? Every time I get in my car and I turn the ignition, okay, I might be aware, but I'm not particularly aware, but I am keenly aware of the pollution my car is putting out, right? I can see it. If I went round the back and somebody said, just put your mouth there and breathe for 5 minutes, I'm going to say no every time, because I know I can totally draw a line between my car, environmental damage. This thing, I don't connect it. I just see it as it's fun.
You're really 2 or 3 degrees removed, right? You have to plug it in the wall, which goes in there, which goes to electricity.
It stays there overnight, and I unplug it from the wall, and that is such a clean experience. It's like hermetically sealed. There's no weirdness. There's no dust or mess or goo or pollutants. It's just plug in. Here it is, and it's the same with my setup here. It's all just not polluting. Of course it is. But we don't make the connection. So that, I imagine, Steve, is I'm going to guess that's the reason. We are so insulated from the effects of it. The only effect that I see is my electricity bill.
So if your phone was billowing out black, dirty smoke every time it ran,
it'd be like put in a box, wouldn't it? It'd be switched off at every opportunity. You'd turn it on for the tiniest amount of time, use it, probably, like over here, or get a big pipe and put it out. But I know it's a stupid thing to say, but there is a connection, right? This thing is consuming stuff which presumably at some point has either got burned or maybe increasingly, is consuming some sort of renewable energy. I don't really know, but I think that's the difficult bit.
You're kind of right in that it's minuscule as well. You picking up your phone and looking at the news is a very minuscule, tiny impact on anything. But once we start, we're a WordPress podcast. Things happen at scale. Once I think in the comments thread that you posted there, they have some numbers on what happened to Danny's plugin when he took out lots of the extra CSS and JavaScript, much more lightweight, and then it's installed on 2 million sites, which load, and this particular plugin loads every single time those 2 million sites load. Suddenly, the work that someone like Jonathan does on the performance team, for example, that scales to half the web real quick.
So I'm going to just quote from something that maybe gives some sort of context. Wow, the numbers just are mind-boggling. Thanks so much for this crucial impulse. As WordPress is used on so many websites, the impact of it is to make it cleaner would be huge. I think many of you know the story. By the way, this is a chap called Michael Voigt, or Voigt, V-O-I-T. Then this, I think, is the MailChimp plugin. They made a reduction of 20 kilobytes in the plugin, and because of the install base, we estimate that there's a saving of 700 tons. I'm going to say that again, 700 tons of carbon. Now, what? Wow. Is that true for a start? And if it is true, I think Hannah's onto something that we all need to be onto, frankly.
Yeah.
Wow.
I think one of the issues is going to be how do you police that? How if you're going to give somebody a badge to say yes, that's an eco-friendly plugin or theme. Who determines that? We're
what would be interesting
is
it, and I have, forgive me because of my ignorance, I don't know if this could even be pulled off, but in the same way that I have a Nest thermostat, and it sort of congratulates me with icons if I'm doing well compared to the UK as a whole. I get like these leaves, and the leaves accumulate, and every time a leaf pops in there, I know it's nothing, but I feel, actually, do you know what, compared to some other people, I'm making more of an effort. Something in the dashboard of WordPress which give you a visual impact, compared to the top million other WordPress websites, you're doing really well. And this plugin in particular, we've noticed a drop. And do you know what I mean? Some sort of system inside of WordPress to give end users like me, some kind of indication that things have improved.
I think it's really difficult.
Yeah.
I'm trying to think of how to collect my thoughts here, but it's really difficult at this level to assess impact, right? You could have a 2 kilobyte theme that's like eco-friendly, right? But then you have users that run it on a site in a data center that they shovel coal into the furnace, right?
Right.
Or you could, and so I think that what we really need to think about are what are the software principles that we can use that can lead to less carbon, right? Only running code when you need to, having shipping thin zip files, right? If something's old and isn't really used, and WordPress is guilty of this, but something's old and deprecated, are you able to remove that from your plugin? Plugins and themes will probably be much easier for them to remove that than WordPress itself. One thing that WordPress does is we only ship the last 3 default themes in a new install of WordPress, right? We're not shipping 2010 through 2023. So that's one thing that scales eventually. But at that base level of I have a plugin, I have a theme, and it's eco-friendly, it's really difficult to really say that with any definition, because it's just such a wide picture. Like it's really the 10-foot view of the 30,000-foot view. That's what you
kind of going back to my car analogy. You could buy a really clean petrol car and use it all day, every day, and thrash it. And whereas somebody else might buy the exact same car and it stays in a garage for 900 days.
Or it's like buying a fuse, right? A fuse for the fuse box in the car that runs on either a diesel or like a 10 mile per gallon car. It's just really difficult at that level of the scale to kind of definitively say that you're eco-friendly. And not to say that these things are bad, but that's kind of why I lean towards like let's establish some eco-friendly principles that if you follow these principles and again, that's really difficult to say without someone reviewing all this stuff all the time and a lot of man hours, people hours there. It's just, if we all as a community pledge to be better about following these principles, then I think that we would notice a difference over time in general.
Okay, so really what this piece was about, we kind of got stuck into the weeds of it a little bit, but really the promotion here is that there is now I can't say the word, there is a sustainability channel. It's 100 strong at the moment, maybe it's gone up a little bit by now, but I will link to this piece in the show notes, and if this is something that you are interested in, then you can go and make your voice heard. And really, I suppose what they're trying to do is just thrash out the conversation that we've just had and get some solid ideas for things that could be done, because it is clear that at the scale that WordPress is at, it definitely is having a material impact, and it would be nice if a bit like the what was the team that we were mentioning earlier, the speed, I want to say speed team, but it's not team? With the what, sorry?
Performance team?
Yeah, of course. Thank you. That's the word. Yeah. The performance team, it didn't exist a little while ago, and they got together and came up with some ideas and had a big impact. Maybe the same could be true here. We've got the sustainability team and see what they can do.
I think we could learn a lot from other projects too.
Sorry, let's go Jonathan and then Steve.
I was going to say we could probably learn from some other tech projects, like I know Bitcoin, one of their the blockchain is incredible. If you are infuriated by hosting at scale with problems with the environment, don't look at that. But they more urgently need to solve that problem on that technology. And so I think that by looking at how other projects and how other technologies solve certain problems, we can really extract a lot of that work into our results. So maybe the team, that's something for them to do, is to analyze how others solve problems and what applies to us as an ecosystem and pull those things in.
This is about a year ago we talked about that exact thing, the whole Bitcoin thing. It was one of the bits that we just sort of threw in at the end of the show. And at that time, I would imagine, I don't know, but I'm kind of guessing maybe Bitcoin mining has gone down a little bit, because I think Ethereum especially has gone to a different proof of work now. But at the time, a year ago, Bitcoin miners used more of the world's energy than, wait for it, Argentina. I mean, it
was anyway, a ridiculous concept, wasn't it?
I mean, just a ridiculous statistic. Aaron, thanks for joining us. 100% agree. He's agreeing with you, Jonathan, about that. Yeah. So anyway, low-hanging fruit. I can't affect the Bitcoin community so much, but maybe the WordPress community I can. So let's maybe see if we can get stuck into that. Right, change of... Oh, sorry, Steve, you were going to say something. I apologize.
Oh, I think my comment was that these teams bubble up over time. The accessibility team realized there was a problem and set about tackling it. The performance team, and now Hannah with her sustainability team. And I do suspect there's an awful lot of overlap with the performance team.
Yeah.
They have maybe 50, 60% of their concerns in common. That I think maybe Hannah would tell you that a lot of what makes a sustainable project is just very good, solid, normal web design, web coding practices.
Yeah. It's much like accessibility. If you make a site accessible, you're making a site easier to use for everybody. If you improve the performance on your product, you're going to make your product more sustainable. So I think, it'd be nice to see on WordPress.org, maybe in conjunction with the performance stuff around sustainability and how you can improve on sustainability by following certain practices, like Nathan said, very simply. Don't enqueue your style sheets, or don't enqueue things for your plugin unless your plugin is being used presently on the page that you're on, things like that. So
Okay, so we need to definitely, over the next few years, we need to hardwire our heads into, I'm using my phone, I'm in some way damaging the environment. And,
I'm just going to have this smoke impression.
Right, yes,
my phone from
it. Yeah. No, but it's this Google and Apple, and I'm not pointing a finger because we're talking about WordPress, but it does strike me that Google and Apple, they really could change my opinion about the phone of course they're not going to, because it's not in their interest to have you, be told your phone has consumed so many units of carbon over the last 24 hours or what have you. But something like that, little add-on that you could add to your phone might be something that might turn my direction. I think sometimes I just need to be slapped in the face to be sort of like shocked into the reality of it. Like that statistic about Bitcoin mining in Argentina, that was so raw that it was like, well, yeah, if I have
like
any
cigarettes,
interest, yeah,
they'll have
right,
on the picture
right,
on the back of your
yeah,
phone.
Yeah.
I think that's where they're going in that Slack channel as well. They're going down that route. Some of the early conversations in that sustainability Slack channel are talking about what is the actual number of websites that are running on WordPress, and they're trying to determine that now that we've lost some of the stats around that. But we boast that we power 45% of the internet or whatever the current figure is, but on the flip side, that means we've got a lot of responsibility there.
Yeah. I've got a suggestion, Mark. You just get on the blower to your good mates, Matt. And,
I wish it was like that. But no,
it'll all be fixed in the morning. Okay, right.
Matt and Desrosiers, they're all happy they got a call with Mark.
Right. Yeah.
Okay. I was lucky enough to speak with Mark.
Okay, couple of bits just that I said I'd mention to a couple of people. The first one is Visual Composer, along with Vito Peleg. They're doing a webinar. I believe it's happening on the 10th of November. Yes, it is. It's called Growing Your Agency Through Better Client Collaboration. The idea is they're going to tackle these three things: streamlining your content delivery process to save time, increasing the quality of feedback through visual collaboration, and learn how to keep your referral flywheel rolling. Vito, of course, has been on this show lots and lots of times, and he is the guy who founded Atarim, so he knows a thing or two. The other thing that I said I'd mention is Todd Jones. He's put a survey together. He does this every year, and it's all about what web care consultants are doing with their clients. What are the kind of things that you're doing in terms of charging your clients? What kind of work are you carrying out for them? And he just wants a little bit of data, really. Obviously, in this case, it's for Main WP, who he does work for, to give them some sort of guidance. And I will link to both of those things in the show notes, which will come out as an email tomorrow or on the website. A bit of news that you probably knew about, but I thought I'd mention it anyway. PHP 7.4 is at the end of life. It's not like it'll stop working or anything. It'll continue to work after the end of November. But that'd be hysterical if that's how it worked. It just suddenly stopped working.
Gives up.
Yeah, that's right. All these websites go. It's no longer going to be maintained or updated. So, if there is some sort of horrific 0 day that somebody somewhere knows about and isn't, because apparently that's what they do. They wait for the end of life and then start to exploit them. What we're basically trying to say is go to your hosting provider and just double check that you're on something beginning with an 8 is probably the way to go. Apparently 60% of all websites written in PHP are still using a PHP 7 branch, which strikes me as quite a lot. This is coming from iThemes. I don't know where they're getting.
Yeah, I think that's high, but
I think
to the new major version is always a lot, and 8 seemed to be a little bit more than usual. 8.2 actually comes out, I believe, at the end of the month, and you can run WordPress 6.1 on that.
Okay.
But it depends on a lot of the changes in PHP 8.x depend on plugins and themes also adopting and having compatibility. So WordPress's core might be WordPress core's code might be compatible, but the extension of that needs to also be compatible. And so that's what's taking a little bit of time for plugins and themes to catch up and have a little bit more confidence. We call it beta compatibility right now because we're still assessing how to best fully be compatible with some of these changes in WordPress itself.
Slightly tangential, going back to the last piece, do PHP upgrades, so 8.1, 8.2, do they typically mean that less resources are used? Because obviously new features and things come in. I just wonder what the...
Usually.
Interesting.
Yeah, and especially like 7 to 8, there's usually at least a magnitude of performance improvement.
Aaron says many methods change from warnings to fatals in 8.x. Yeah.
Yes. Yeah. But it's up to the plugin developers and things to update and get these things compatible. I mean, it's been 2 years since 8 came out. There's and usually, I don't know, if you run your plugin through hosting running on 8.x, you can identify these things pretty easily. Just enable debug on WordPress and do your testing and work out where those issues are. But there's obviously tools out there to help you out with that as well. But like Jonathan said, most of this it's more on the plugin side, and that's where I've seen issues. Has been enabling 8, and then there's just no end of warnings shooting up on my screen. A lot of people don't see those warnings because they don't have debug enabled on WordPress, but they're happening behind the scenes and running up your logs behind the scenes with umpteen different warnings. So.
Yeah.
I don't think the problem is so much that 60% of sites are on PHP 7, but probably that the other 40 are still on PHP 5.
Oh, Lord.
You wouldn't believe how many people are still stuck there.
Yeah.
I've seen the statistics, and there's more. I think it's sub 5% are on PHP 5.6, but more on 5.6 than 7.0 and 7.1 combined, I believe.
Wow.
So it's people are updating the 7.2 at least, but there's we still have that long trail of stragglers that we need to get upgraded.
Well, we have site health in the admin, which most people, I think, just immediately disable and make it screen options. Make that go. But it might tell you things like that.
We're getting to the point where it's mostly just self-managed boxes.
That's right. Yeah, just
we get to that point where there's just nothing we can do eventually unless we get to those people that and make them informed.
Yeah. Okay, just very quickly, because I know we're running out of time and I don't want to keep you. The first one is to mention that WP All Import, they, I can't remember who reached out to me, but somebody reached out to me via, I think Twitter it was, to say that they've changed their pricing model. They haven't yet. They're currently on a lifetime deal, and they will be for the next period. They don't exactly say how long it is, but if this was a plugin that had ever crossed your radar, and you wish to be involved in it, then now might be a good time to consider buying it. If you want to go that route, if you want to go for the the subscription model, which will obviously make them more revenue, then wait a while. Maybe by the new year you'll be paying in that way. But if you want to go and leap before it flips over to that, so be it. Speaking of unnecessary use of the Earth's resources, well, what can I say? So this is probably a great example of not to have a lean website, but it also speaks beautifully to the fact that it's shiny, and I want shiny. This is just lovely. I'll put the link in the show notes. This is CSS to the max. So this, I mean, you've got to see this. I can't explain it, but basically, if you've ever seen Pokemon cards, they've got this kind of like thin layer of, I don't know what it is, but it's kind of like this reflective layer. And as you twist them in the sun, you've seen these things before, I'm sure. As you twist them in the sun, all these beautiful,
I think they call them holographics, but I'm not speaking from experience or anything.
Yeah, no, I'll go with that. The holographic, the card seems to have holograms in it. And so somebody, whoever has set this website up, it looks like Simey.me, Simon Golner, has decided that he wanted to implement this in CSS. And man alive, has he done a beautiful job. I mean, look at I don't want to like it as much as I do, but it's so nice. Look at that. It's lovely. Those of you that are listening to the audio, I do apologize. Go and check the show. Look at that one. He's got like these little sort of starry things going on in the background. It's just a beautiful implementation.
It's relatively lean code behind the scenes as well.
This is the one that I like. This one. Look at that. Isn't that clever? Sublimely cool. And just done with a bit of CSS and various other sort of, easy to understand technology. So really nice job. And speaking of the environment, last one, nothing to do with WordPress. What we need, right? What we need is circular buildings 800 feet off the ground. That's what we need. This is something stupid from Dubai. This is an architect's desire to have a circular ring about 600 meters off the ground surrounding the world's tallest building because, There is
that
no
looks
limit.
like it would use the power of Argentina.
That's right. Imagine that. I wanted to say more about that, but I can't because we've run out of time. So we'll just wrap it up there. Thank you, guys. I really appreciate it. I hope that Jonathan and Steve particularly weren't too put off by it because they've not been here before. Hopefully you'll come back and join us another day. Mark, I know, will be, so I don't need to be quite so nice to him. But Jonathan, really appreciate it. Steve, really appreciate it. And of course, Mark, really appreciate it as well.
Thanks for having me.
Thank you to anybody who posted comments. That was really helpful. It kept the conversation going. Now, Jonathan and Steve, I do apologize in advance, but we do this bit at the end of every show where we raise our hands like this and we wave them all in unison. So look, Mark's got the idea. So if you wouldn't mind raising your hands, and then that's all it takes. And then I use that for the little album art. That's brilliant. Thank you very much. We'll be back next week. Cheers. Take it easy, guys.